Hey guys, Troy here, back with another video today. Background is a little bit different. I'm in the bubble right now, so bear with it, but I'm still going to try to bring you guys some videos and do what we can. We are back today with another player comparison. You guys asked for it. Today we're going to be comparing the Prism PSA 10 of Michael Porter Jr. and the Prism PSA 10 of Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Alright, so let's just get right into it. We're going to look at the graph of Michael Porter Jr. first. He was probably one of the biggest risers of the entire bubble. You guys remember his card prices went absolutely insane when he had a couple of those big games, and you can see that down below here. His prices were averaging about $75 even below back in May and June, as you can see here on the left side. But when he really exploded, his prices got all the way up to over $500. So maybe a little bit of an overreaction. They didn't stay there for very long. And now the same card is currently available for right at $200. Okay, so that was just a quick look at his graph. But what about Michael Porter Jr. as a player? I think most people are pretty familiar with him. A ton of potential. Only averaged about 9 points per game during the regular season last year. But you saw it in the bubble when he put it together and he had opportunities that he showed that all-NBA, all-star type potential that people have talked about with him since high school, really. Not only does he have the potential to be an elite scorer with size, but like I mentioned, he showed that in limited minutes, and even in those limited minutes during the regular season, his advanced metrics were all NBA level. Not to mention the fact that he's not just a scorer. The way he cuts, he rebounds, he provides assists, he actually knows pretty well how to play within the team game. The problem though is if there is one negative, even with all his physical gifts and the stuff he's able to do, he's actually not a very good defender right now. And just him being a rookie, it was always going to be tough in the playoffs to kind of get those extended minutes. But I think defense was part of the reason his coach didn't trust him as much once it got down to that crunch time. So next season is going to be huge for him and his card prices, obviously. He has all the potential in the world, as much potential as pretty much any young guy you can name, but there are two main issues I have. The first being very obvious, not any type of special take, but the injuries. Will he be able to stay healthy? He was healthy in the bubble, you know, he's getting back into the swing of things, but when someone has an injury history like that, you always at least have to take it into account because you never know for sure what's going to happen. The second is a good thing and a bad thing. He's on a very talented team, a team who, especially if they make a couple moves, could be contending really, but at least is going to be there in the playoffs being relevant. But that may limit his minutes. You know, I think he'll still be getting a lot of minutes, but maybe he won't get as many shots and the opportunity to really thrive as some of these other players. Which brings me to the second player we're going to talk about today. Let's look here at Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's graph. Same trend as almost every player we've looked at, but when you compare it to Michael Porter Jr.'s, you don't see the extreme highs and lows and the overreactions you got. And unfortunately, some of that kind of is a bad thing because SGA did not have the huge bubble performances that everyone expected. Maybe our expectations were a little too high, but we saw similar performance that he was giving in the regular season. And as a result, his card prices did not jump as high or as fast as someone like Michael Porter Jr. His cards were available for average of $150 back in May and June on the left side of this graph here. And at the peak in July, they got to a high of $385. And then here on the right, they're available for $220, kind of leveling off solidly at that price point. So the only thing interesting here on the graph compared to Michael Porter Jr. is one, he is actually a little more expensive right now, which could be surprising to some people. And also, obviously, he has not gotten close to the highs that Michael Porter Jr.'s cards have reached. That doesn't mean he'll never get there, but it just means they haven't so far. All right, that's enough on his graph. What about SGA, the player? A very smart, high IQ combo guard who's willing to do a little bit of everything, play some defense, nice passes to his teammates, able to score, and kind of be crafty in there. If you haven't actually watched him play, you may be a little surprised to hear that he's not particularly athletic, and a lot of his finishes are predicated on misdirection, footwork, and change of pace. but he does all that stuff at a very elite level, even at a young age. He averaged 19 points per game this year after not making too much noise his rookie year. So I think he's really only starting to unlock his potential, and I could see him having a big next year, especially when we're starting to hear rumors and mumblings that CP3 will get traded. I think CP3 is a great player, but I think it's likely the Thunder move into a more rebuilding direction, in which case SGA will have free reign to get his shots up, work on his game, and really become a true leader. And I think this time with CP3 was invaluable for him to learn how to do that. Now, it's important for players to be on good teams and contending, but a lot of times, especially if you're looking for maybe a shorter flip, players having an opportunity to get shots up and put up those numbers that are gonna excite collectors can be even more important. So that brings me to my verdict. And the winner for me is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Now, I'll agree with you 100%. In my opinion, Michael Porter Jr. has the way higher ceiling, but for me, it's too risky at this point. I mean, you could even make the case just off injury concerns alone that you shouldn't be investing. But once again, he only averaged 9 points per game this season. If it's something like, even an improvement, 13, 14, his card prices are gonna plummet. I'd be very surprised if SGA doesn't at least stay at that 20 point per game level in the upcoming season, which if he does, his cards will still remain somewhat steady at the value you're able to pick them up for right now. And as I mentioned, with more opportunity, more of a leadership role, I think he has a good chance to actually make the All-Star team next year, which for MPJ, I think he can do it, but I would be a little surprised to see it happening so quickly next year. So if we're talking about 1 year horizon, who I'm looking to buy for next season, I would definitely go for SGA. But the argument could still definitely be made for Michael Porter Jr., especially if you're talking long-term, who has a bigger chance to be, more of a transcendent, real superstar. But as always, that's just my opinion, guys. Make sure you comment down below what you guys think, and make sure to like and subscribe. We're gonna keep the videos coming. Thanks again.